let's get started on taking a look at the track plan that I've come up with. The track plan has been drawn up using the AnyRail CAD software. I find it very simple to use. The overall space that I'm working with in my basement is 28 feet by 28 feet. The black line here that's highlighted is the actual exterior walls of the basement. And then you can see out of this 28 by 28, there's this corner, so a quarter of it I'm not really able to use. So the basic plan, the Ma and Pa ran from Baltimore, Maryland to York, Pennsylvania. What I've created here is a point-to-point layout for operational purposes, which Baltimore is here. We travel down the main line. And then here's York Yard. So let me zoom in and we'll talk about some areas in a little more detail. As I mentioned, it's a point-to-point, but I have added this option here through. This is the Pennsylvania Railroad interchange. These tracks here, and then this is a track that comes through. This, if you go to the left, allows continuous running on the layout for, visitors, shows, or just a rail fan, the railroad. And then, or you can come over this way, and over here will be the programming track and a little yard with this is just, here's where the workbench is. So if I bring rolling stock over that needs repairs, I can come here. So the first thing that I tried to do was I wanted to have towns designed such that they're at least as reasonably representative of the actuals. I bought the track maps. You can buy a complete set of drawings of how the track was laid out, which includes a number of buildings, some of which are labeled, some are not. But I got those, and those are drawn from, are taken from 1918, which is 30 years before the 1947 time frame that I'm modeling. But I'm going to use that as my basis, and I'm less worried about trying to get my track exactly right for 1947. I figure there will be some changes, but it won't be too significant. So the first town out of Baltimore, and we can see here in the Baltimore yard, there's going to be I'm still working out how this is going to work, but there'll be a couple of tracks for staging to have trains ready to go that can just run for operating sessions. But then this will also actually be a little bit of a classification yard. And then over here, I'll zoom this in so you can actually see the text. Two tracks here representing the interchange with the Baltimore and Ohio, one track representing the interchange with the Western Maryland Railroad, and then I have one track here that I'm thinking was where the REA, RPO cars will go. In the Baltimore yard, we'll have the basic yard facility, have the turntable and the roundhouse. This was a significant feature in Baltimore. This roundhouse is still standing, although it's used by I believe the town of Baltimore to store salt for salting the roads, but it was a much bigger structure, but I thought I should at least have it. And I needed the turntable with this idea to be able to turn locomotives around. So come out of Baltimore, the first town you hit is Towson. There's a couple of big industries here. There's the Black & Decker facility. There's a large lumber yard. There are many coal trestles, coal dealers on the layout, so they're bidding over them. Then we have your station, your platform, and a milk platform here. Milk was a big commodity on the Maryland and Pennsylvania in the area that I'm modeling. Here, these little guys are passenger stops. So if we zoom in here, this is at Notchcliff. So we come around, and you come into Bel Air. Bel Air was a significant source of traffic for the railroad. You got the American Oil Company here. You've got McComas Brothers. You've got Corbin Ice, Corbin Bulk Fuel Oil, Bell Furniture. There's a freight platform, freight house here. There's a warehouse, as well as a mill, and I haven't figured out what this is. But so then we come around the curve here. There's a trestle here. Come around the curve and come into Forest Hill, where we have Smithson. We have the station. There's a warehouse. There's only two spurs in Forest Hill, and this is how it was laid out. Continue on through Forest Hill. We're now going to come to what will be a iconic scene on the railroad, which is a gross trestle number 316. This is a 400-foot long trestle, curved. It's an iconic photo of for the Maryland Pennsylvania Railroad. I'll try to pop one up here in the video showing a train crossing, a one-car train, I think it was, engine, car, and caboose. Now we come through, we hit Islesville, Maryland, and here we have the Western Maryland Dairy. Come through here into this. I haven't figured out what I'm doing here. This is kind of a conglomeration of Delta and Cardiff and Whiteford on the railroad. So I'm not sure how I'm going to name this, but we have several industries here. And at this point, there's the Delta branch that comes off of here. There's a couple-mile long branch that came off the main line and comes up here to serve a couple of industries. Continuing on the main line, you come around. This is Muddy Creek Forks. This is where you can go today and see and ride what's left of the Maryland Pennsylvania Railroad. Very iconic station. These tracks are kind of backwards if you're coming from Baltimore. This track would actually be off to the right, but I just couldn't fit that in. And the station would be off to the left, so this is kind of flip-flopped. I've used some modeler's license to be able to fit this in because I really want to conclude Muddy Creek Forks. So we continue on around the main line, and now we're into, this is actually Red Line, which is a major source of traffic on the railroad. So again, I've tried to lay the traffic plan out to represent as best I could within the space that I had the actual buildings and track configuration that the Ma and Pa had, including the information about, try to lay the streets out relatively correctly, and so on and so forth. So continuing out of Red Line, again coming around the big curve. These curves are 22-inch. The minimum curve on the main line is 20, but most of the curves are 22-inch, wherever I could make them 22-inch. And I'm using very small locomotives on this railroad, NW2s, SW1, and then some very small steam locomotives. So no large, modern-day locomotives. 60-foot passenger cars, 40-foot, primarily 40-foot freight cars. So very small rolling stock, so it should look okay. This is the only section of the railroad that I really have not spent the time to figure out what it's going to look like prototypically. The green line here, and there was another one up at Bel Air. This is a scenery block, so to divide the two scenes visually. But this is Dallastown, PA. Coming around here, you hit another passenger stop, and then finally you come into York. Now, this is the York B yard, what they call the B yard. And I have tried to model this as faithfully as I possibly could in terms of track diagram and track layout. So on that, you come into the yard, the turntable and the engine facilities off to the right with a sand track and a scrap track, and then you come in. Here's a coal. Here's a scale, and then these tracks, the same number of tracks laid out in the exact same configuration. This is the passenger station. Now, in reality, for this to be completely correctly, this line that's coming past turntable would curve up like this, and it would be up here. But I did to have it here, so hopefully that will work out. And then this track here, which in reality in the real Ma and Pa would have come up over here, and is the drill lead. And also there was a lumber company way up here. This actually just curves around, and then I have just a pure staging yard here. Now this cannot be very long. This is going underneath the stairwell, and at the elevation of the track, I can only go so far back here. But the idea here is that these will only hold the actual freight cars or passenger cars. Not this won't include the engine or the caboose because these are so short. So in order to take a stage train out, either the yard master or the engineer, the crew for the train, get the locomotive out, go pull the cars out, grab the caboose, and be on their way. So it won't be a more typical where you just come over, the train's ready to go, you pull it out, and you're on your way. And again, as I mentioned, this section here represents the interchange with the Pennsylvania Railroad, and then it also provides for the continuous loop by going up this way or going over to the workbench. So this is the overall plan. This is obviously a many year in the making type of plan. So what I've decided to do is, in order to get started, is to create phase one. And phase one encompasses this section right here, this peninsula. of the railroad. And so that's here. And what you can see is what I've done is on the on the actual design, this is the main line that continues towards Baltimore, and this main line here would go across Gross Trestle and continue towards York. So I've put in a temporary turn loop here so that this can be a continuously running layout, and I can get started on this, start working on scenery. I want to use this as a vehicle to start working towards my golden spike certificate and the other NMRA achievement, hopefully. So this is an overall. This is 16 feet by 4 feet, so I just want to get it started. I've got all the wood to frame the benchwork. I've got all of the flex track that I need to be able to put in the main line to create the loop, and I have all the switches. So I have everything that I need to, in theory, to build the benchwork and get the mainline loop with the turnouts that are required put down. So that's my goal. Hope you guys will follow along on the series as I continue to make updates on it. I will take you down now into the basement, show you the space as it exists at the moment, and then we'll start going from there. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so here's the space, the majority of the space as it exists today. So here we have the play around loop of track. We have the staging track sitting over here, and then we have again the switchless studio, and then the desk. So the part that I'm going to start on that I was describing previously is going to extend from that wall over there to this post right here, and will be basically not quite exactly centered on the post, but more or less 2 feet on either side, 16 feet back. It's going to come out to about right here where I'm standing. So there'll be it's a 4x16 overall with a little bit of a cutout in the middle, so kind of a dog bone shape that eventually will continue on around this wall. There'll be another peninsula that will come out here, and so it'll come back around, and then come around this wall again, and then this will also push back farther. These curtains will drop down, and it's going back another 10 feet on the other side of those, and then it will ultimately come up, and then York, the yard at York, will be here above this table. I guess I'm going to probably leave for now the countertop, the workspace, if you will. There, these shelves will come down. The yard will be sitting right at about 46 inches above the ground, and in here, and then it will go into this. The goal is it'll go through the wall right here and underneath the stairwells there for some staging tracks, and it will also pass through the wall farther back here, as you should have seen on the diagram, and then go into what is the interchange with the PRR Railroad, and there'll be maybe some industry back there. I don't know yet, so that's still a work in progress. But the main thing is we're going to turn all of this space ultimately someday, and then Baltimore Yard will come, and we'll continue down over to there. So, but anyway, I've got the wood and the screws and the glue in the garage ready to go, and so I'm going to start rearranging all this stuff, getting it out of the way, and I'll probably just move the existing table layout over there in the corner and free up the space, and we'll start building the benchwork. The benchwork's going to be built with the intent that if it needed to be taken apart to be moved, it can. So it's all going to be not modular, if you will, but built to be taken apart. That's the plan anyway, so hopefully I'll be able to get some video as I work on this, and you can see the progress. And I'm really hoping, this is Sunday evening right now. It's going to get started on this tomorrow morning. I'm really hoping to be able to, by the time I have to go back to work, which isn't until January 2nd, to have at least the mainline track loop in place. That's the plan, so hopefully we'll get there. So stay tuned, we'll see what happens.